A very good afternoon. You're watching the newsroom right here on ET Now. I'm Ajaya Sharma. Well, we've been getting you slices and analysis of the Deloitte survey right now as far as the fraud and even cyber risks are concerned. We are taking that forward in our last of the series in that survey. Today, we are putting the spotlight on a very sensitive issue, which is a fallout of the risks which have risen in the environment related to cyber security, etc., frauds, etc. Today, we are putting the spotlight of instances of corruption and bribery. We've got a very special gentleman joining us who's an expert on this matter from Deloitte. Sumit Makhija is joining us to discuss more of that. Sumit, we've been reading about this. We've been analyzing the survey outcome on our channel. But today we are putting the spotlight on much more sensitive issue, which is a fallout of cyber security accidents and frauds which are really happening. But this one is also in the area where it's punitive. It may get punitive for a lot of people. What exactly is happening? Because corruption and bribery matters are also on the rise. Why is it so important for the ecosystem, for corporates, all the regulators, and for everybody around us, the corporate India ecosystem, to understand the gravity of the situation in your view?
Thank you, Ajay, for having me. And incidentally, today is also International Anti-Corruption Day. So a very relevant topic, which is also the need of hour for companies as well as the societies in general. So if you look at Deloitte's India Corporate Fraud Perception Survey, which is the topic which you picked up and which is the basis for us to come back to this issue, a vast majority, which is more than 80%, actually believe that the current business environment will result in spurt in fraud and corruption cases over the next 2 years. A majority also said that in 70% instances, the quantum of the fraud and corruption will increase in the future. And that's because of, the new environment. It is, be it remote working environment, be it the new business line which the companies are introducing, or use of extensive technology, which gives rise to, spurt in fraud cases. Now, when we come to the specific issue of bribery and corruption, it remains as a significant fraud risk for businesses across the world. Nearly 12% of the respondents to the Deloitte survey named it as the most likely scheme of fraud of the future. Now, that's also coming from the fact that procurement and use of third party taken to get identified by the survey respondents is prone to fraud. And both of these, if you look at it, be it procurement or the third parties, are actually associated with kickback and corruption cases. Now, instances of bribery and corruption are only going to increase due to the disruption. Why that happens? Because one, the historical data actually has shown that business disruption have actually resulted in a rise in a discovery of the fraudulent practices. The second, when we look at the pandemic, the companies are facing supply chain shortages. Clients are looking at alternate ways of meeting their demands, which actually result in pressures on them. And a pressure is one of the sides of the triangle which leads to increase in fraud cases, and particularly in these cases, the corruption and bribery type are likely to increase. If you look at international world, in some of the activities carried out, in particularly in the areas pertaining to the COVID relief or COVID-related medical equipment supply, there are already cases which are coming to light in the last 6 months where there have been issues related to corruption in procurement, in distribution of relief funds. So this is a topic which should be on the top of the mind of every corporate, given the current state of affairs.
Mr. Makhija, talk to us a little bit in detail about the kind of responses you got. What kind of questions did you pose to the corporates? The reason I want to understand is that are the your potential clients or the corporate India people, representatives you spoke with or interviewed or surveyed here, do they understand the risks which are being posed that organizations are open to in the new environment, in the new normal?
Yeah, so Ajay, our survey was focused on fraud in a generic or a larger sense. Our survey was actually responded by close to 200 respondents across multiple industries, both medium and large organizations. The questions were around the kind of issues which they see as the relevant issues in the fraud scenarios. So what we asked them was, what do they believe are going to be in the current environment the most significant type of risk from fraud, right? And no wonder corruption and bribery came as one of the answers, where nearly 12% of the respondents to our survey said that it's going to be the most likely scheme. And when you look at that combined with some of the key areas which they were identifying with it. So when we asked them, okay, what are going to be the key areas or key the parameters with which this gets aligned? So the answer came that procurement and use of third parties, which is what I mentioned. In one case, 20% of the respondents say that that's going to be the single most important area from a perspective of frauds taking place, or use of third parties in 36% cases. So when you read the survey findings in line with what one is seeing from a perspective of the areas identified and the issue, one sees that there is a lot of emphasis which the companies are posing to issues pertaining to corruption and bribery in this survey.
Right. Let's shift focus and talk about a gist of what kind of solutions can be offered. What should companies go about? As we discussed in the earlier surveys as well, that mitigation of risk management processes being deployed is much better than going about plugging a gap when the accident actually happens. What are your thoughts on that one?
Take it in two parts, Ajay. One is taking from the risk management aspect, which you mentioned. So while a majority of the survey respondents feel that they do have fraud risk management, but 43% of the respondents to the Deloitte survey said that their fraud risk management may be inadequate to mitigate the fraud risk of the future, and which also brings us to the fact that, one, we are living in a tech-enabled environment where technology-related frauds have taken a hit. Coming specifically to the issue of corruption, what generally we look at is, one, the regulation, which is thing like a Prevention of Corruption Act. Second, what are the guidance which the organizations are getting? Particularly in this case, there is guidance coming in from legislators across the globe, and something which is of relevance is the Department of Justice of USA's compliance guidance, which came in June 2020. What this gives is a framework which the corporates should use, and also, given the current environment, the suggestions for the companies are to ensure that they have a comprehensive anti-bribery and compliance program, and which is updated keeping the current environment in mind, to make sure that none of the recent updates or what the environment changes have taken place, those are left undetected. So some of the consideration which the companies should have in their mind, that they should continue on a continuous basis carry out detailed corruption risk assessments, make sure that there is real-time monitoring of the business transactions, because particularly in pandemic, what happens that many a times business takes precedent over compliance. That should be balanced very well. When it comes to the third parties, which is a single most area of largest abuse in this area, that should be on a regular basis. There should be due diligence on the third parties. There should be adequate monitoring of the third parties and partners. Also, this time, the company should also ensure that their whistleblower program, any escalation mechanism which is in place, should be working and should be effective. Also, when you look at the new environment, maybe there is a need for some of the organizations to relook at their anti-corruption policy, policies around corporate social responsibility, and most importantly, there should be constant and regular training and communication program to employees and stakeholders and third parties to make sure that they understand that this is a significant risk which the corporate may be exposed to in the environment, and they're taking adequate measures for that.
Right. Lastly, I wanted to leave on a positive note, Sumit. Let's talk about some of the best practices several of the corporates are already deploying in this area, which may actually turn out to be an example for everybody else to listen also about.
See, when it comes to combating corruption and bribery, it's very important that it is a multi-pronged approach which the organizations are taking, and even at society level or the country level, it has to be a multi-pronged approach. So there has to be a framework, and the framework can come from policies, procedures that should be supported with powers and administrative authority given to, let's say, the compliance officer, who is doing his role with the support of the entire organization, making sure that the partners, which is the third parties, your agents, consultants, they are also participative in this program, and make sure that they are actually doing similar acts as the company is doing at their end. So their level of standards should be brought to the level of the company, because that's very important. Now, when you run a program like this, which is supported with constant monitoring, which also gives a fear of detection among employees and third parties, that become a successful program. And that's what we see when the corporate run a comprehensive program like this. That becomes a really, really effective way of combating bribery and corruption.
Right. All right. We'll let you go on that one. Thanks so much for helping us understand this really important aspect as well. I'm sure a lot of corporates watching our show would have enjoyed this conversation. In fact, the entire series we've been getting for our viewers. Time for a very short break. On the other side of the break, we'll put the spotlight on a lot of stock moving stories which we've been covering, and we'll analyze them for you. So don't go anywhere.